Hello and welcome to Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. This is my podcast about finding success in the gift of who we truly are and how we share it. These are conversations with people I admire, love, and know, and some people I don't know as well about what that looks and feels like, because these people know. And I hope that this is an inspiration to you to find ways to use your unique gifts in pursuing your passions, making your dreams come true, and engaging with the world in the way you were created to serve. I always say, I hope it gets deep because that's where we find the best stuff. But this is also about the fun of life, because if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So let's dare to be brave, be free, be you together. Now, my guest today is somebody who I am honored to say is a friend and colleague who I've looked up to and who also trained me in my job. She is a trusted news personality and journalist who is known for her major exclusive one-on-one interviews with political heavy hitters like former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. She has been honored with many accolades for her work, including the President's Award from the NAACP Image Awards, an honorary doctorate degree from Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina. She is a native Chicagoan, graduate of Northwestern University, and she's had a lot of titles in her career: talk show host, reporter, but she is most well known for her amazing work as the voice of reason when she was the co-host of the Tom Joyner Morning Show, reaching over 100 markets in the U.S. with over 8 million listeners. She still keeps her nationwide audience well informed with her daily news updates on the D.L. Hughley Show and Radio 1 stations across the country, plus her weekly podcast From Ha-Has to Ahas with industry vet Stephen Hill, and her live show on YouTube and Facebook, What You Need to Know, Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Central. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome my good friend Sybil Wilkes to the Fearless Authenticity Podcast. Sister,
how are you? I didn't know who you were talking about. I was just a little, so I was like,
that's all you.
Who's going to be on this show?
That's all you, girl. Oh my God. Okay. An honor, a pleasure. I'm so glad we get this moment to talk.
The honor is mine. I truly love being your guest, and I'm really just very honored to be invited to this. And you and your team being Lisa Finkel, I adore both of you. And Lisa and I go back even further, I think, than you and I go back.
Yes.
So it's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much, sis. I have looked up to you and also had the pleasure at Shadow Traffic back in the day being trained by you to do the work that I did. And I never realized what kind of legacy I was walking into, working behind you, Shirley, Bonnie, all these people. And y'all all were so generous. And so I want to first off start by thanking you for that. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You set me up for success. You set me up for success, sis. And where I want to go with this is you have literally been talking sense into people your entire career, most notably Tom Joyner and Doug Banks. But as being known as the voice of reason, somebody who is entrusted with delivering information straight, no chaser, honestly, fairly, that is not an easy task, especially not during the climate we're in right now. Mm-hmm. When did you realize that this was the work for you?
Wow. Years ago when I got into radio, and my mother and I think it was my first radio job, and that was in Fort Myers, Florida. And Fort Myers, for people who don't know, is on the southwest coast of Florida. And at that time, it was where people went to finalize their wills, ready for the next step. So it was a very small market, and I think it was like the 141st market. And my mom came down to visit, and she said, where else could you get paid for what you used to get in trouble doing, which was running my mouth? And so with that kind of, and that was, for my mom, that was saying, you're doing okay, kid. And so that was pretty much the first time that I felt like I might have been on my path, because radio was not in the framework for me. I went to Northwestern, go Wildcats, right? And was waiting to hear about going to law school. And I did an internship at WKQX radio. And is KQX still Q101?
Yep, okay. It is.
So Sandy Houseman was the news director, and Patricia Smith, I took a class with her, and she pointed me in the direction of this internship. And so God bless her. And so that kind of opened the doors to me. And because to this day, I don't know where the Northwestern radio station is. I just, that was not a part of what I wanted to do. So people were kind of engaging me in the conversation about being a part of radio. And I was like, I like to listen to it. And I used to like to say, until I get it back now, I grew up listening to Tom Joyner, and he hated when I said that. And now I get people saying, I have people working for me now. Right now, Jeanne said, yep. When we were going to kindergarten, Mom would turn on the music and we go, oh, like, oh, dear God.
Girl, that is some humbling stuff, isn't it? You just go, I raised some, I've had this conversation with several different people in the business. It's like that first time somebody comes up and said, I grew up listening to you. Yeah. And you go, I should not have been raising you on the radio.
Trust me, your mamas did not do you right, because it's like the craziness that went on, it just doesn't make any sense that you should have been listening to this at that age and at that hour of the day. So I was always encouraged. So, but as I said, the light bulb kind of went off for me when my mom, said that to me. And then as I was doing the internship at Q101, and that led to my first job in Fort Myers and so on. And people were always very encouraging and saying that, I don't know that I had a voice for radio. I don't think that was it, but just a sense of wanting to provide information, and what we say now, be informed, be empowered. And that was always something that I, strove to do in my job.
And you did it. And you are still doing it. And I love that the different ways that you found of doing it. Because I remember I was really sad when I heard that the show was ending.
You were sad.
I know, right?
but we had a couple of years to kind of get used to it. And then it came with such a quickness. But yeah,
it did. And you know what? The thing that's interesting, because I remember experiencing it early in my career, because when you left to go to work with Tom is when I assumed the roles that you did with Doug, and then on Tom's show as the local news person and stuff. And I was just like, I didn't realize at that time, but I always chalked it up to me being as young as I was. I did not realize how that show would become such a cultural touchstone for us, and also unite our community in a way nationwide that we just had not had the platform to do that before, that being the first real large Black syndicated daily show.
Absolutely.
Did you have a sense going into it that it would come to mean to Black America what it did? And
I can stop you right there.
Okay.
No. And I don't want to interrupt you, but I can tell you very quickly, it because there were always people who, we were kind of looking over our shoulders, because we were always told, well, Donnie Simpson's going to do a syndicated show, and so is going to do a syndicated show, and so on and so forth. And so you couldn't really relax and try to do your job. You were just trying to do as much as you possibly could on that hamster wheel, if you will, in order to keep this gig. And it wasn't any pressure from Tom. It was kind of an internal sense of pressure to keep this going, and to because and there's two things here. First of all, when you're on radio or television, I don't know if they told you this when you were, but always talk as if you're just talking to that one person.
Yep.
And in my case, when I worked with Lisa Finkel, I joke that it was about 13 people that were listening to us in the middle of the night on WGCI AM.
1390, baby.
1390. Yes, that's right. And that was before we got to the other side, WGCI and .I, right?
Right.
So it was about my mom and about 12 of her friends listening to us from 1 to 5 or midnight to 5 a.m. And so that was the group of people that I was talking to. But also, once you get into a larger realm, you kind of still maintain that as if you were just talking to one person. And so thinking about the country and how, because we started on 20 stations, and I didn't even know that we were on that many, quite honestly, Jeanne, when we started. But the response was pretty amazing very quickly. In that first month, we in January, we went to Atlanta for Dr. King's birthday, and we were in DC, and people were really responding. But it was when I was a couple of years later, maybe, and I was thinking about this today because I was doing Minister Louis Farrakhan as a Black History Fact. And when we went and provided the voice during our radio show for the Million Man March,
yes, I remember that, Sybil. I remember that moment.
And there was, we go to work at dark 30, and it's pitch black and you couldn't really see it. And as the sun started to come up and you see this glorious picture of all of these Black men from all over the world, and they're all, reaching out their hands and saying, "Hey, Brother Joyner, thank you. And yes, young sister, thank you for being here." And telling us their stories and how our show had reached them. It was one of the most amazing things I think I can ever remember experiencing. And that was really, and like I said, that was a couple of years after we started the show, that it really dawned on us that, wow, we're reaching people. And, and my godparents in Chicago were still saying, "So are you doing the traffic? You still doing the traffic?" And,
nobody knows what we do. Like literally, like they kind of get it, like literally, because I worked with you and Dee Dee, and Doug. And so when Dee Dee was working with Doug, I would be like, okay, so I did what Sybil did for Steve and George. I did. Oh, so you Dee Dee and Sybil. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I got it. I'm glad it's not just me though.
No. And it is also one of the most humbling things until somebody else says, "Oh, I heard Sybil," and they're like, "What you doing listening to Chicago radio?" Like, no, we're a little bit bigger, but it keeps you grounded, and also it just makes you appreciate that one person that I was reaching out to, they got me. Which is my godparents at that time. So it's a great way to go. I miss radio. I miss that. Although I do it in a way, it's nothing like being with people at the most intimate times of their day, when we wake them up and we gave them touchstones like It's Your World, and when we would do the news and other bits, if you will. And so that kept them going and knew they were on schedule for their morning. Yeah. And then when the kids would get in the car with their parents and they turn it on and they'd hear It's Your World, and they knew that they were about 5 minutes. Yeah, they're about 5 minutes late. And so we got to get a move on, and kids singing the theme song for the show. Yeah, exactly. And so all of those things came to, and when we would go out and start doing sky shows and things, people will come at you, and this because you are in one of the best radio towns ever. People will come at you and address you as if you all had just had a conversation. It's never, "Hi, my name is," like, "Girl, let me tell you," it's like,
remind me of your name again.
Yeah,
that's how I do it, because I'm like, clearly we know each other. Clearly.
Right. Absolutely.
I just hope I don't owe you some money. That's
but we're in radio, so we can't owe that much money, and so
couldn't possibly.
No, ma'am.
But you know what? Here's what I wonder though, for you, especially, and this is the thing that I admired, and this is kind of what where my fearless authenticity concept comes from. This, because I remember Elroy said to me long time ago, Elroy, our old program director, Elroy Smith at GCI.
Smith.
R.C. Smith,
yes,
sir and ma'am. Okay. He said to me, he was like, people, and he said this to a lot of folks I know, people may get their hits wherever. They could get them at this station or that one or whatever, but what they stop for is what happens in between the hits. And that's what you do. And it's this idea that what we bring to things is what makes how we do our job special. There may be a million people that do what we do, but nobody does your job the way you do it, right?
That's right.
And the thing that I loved about you, especially, and I think it became really clear on Tom's show, even though I think it was consistent throughout, was, when they even joke about it, you and your big ass words and being the voice of reason and things. What enabled you or empowered you to not curb or try to tailor who you are to that image or things that we think is expected of us? Because it happens a lot as as women in radio, what people think we should be. And you can't, because I even had somebody, a colleague who will remain nameless, because I'm sure he meant well when he said it. He was like, you can't be talking over people's heads like that. You doing too much of that Northwestern talk and da 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 da. And I was like, people are getting it. My numbers are as good as yours, sir. Yeah. So, whatever. What was your experience when it comes to making the choice of being true to Sybil on the air?
I think that that my parents, and especially my mom, because my dad died when I was very young, but my mother always instilled in me a sense of who I was. And she, I say this, and I said this on the air, and I got a lot of backlash because they're like, you were raised by a Black mama. And yeah, I was. I was raised by a very strong Black woman who was raised by her very strong Black father. And so my mom used to sing to me every morning, "You are my sunshine." And so people said, that's just not the way Black mothers raise their children. And my mom said that because the world was going to be difficult enough once I went out our front door on the south side of Chicago, that she wanted to imbue me and instill in me that sense of who I was, and that what I did was as good as the next person. Now, I did go to a majority white school, and back in the day, there were 3 of us that integrated the school, Morgan Park Academy. And my mom always had to tell me, no matter how good you are, you got to work a little bit harder in order to keep up with those people. So, put your head down and let's go to work. And so it's sort of like I was listening to Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, and his dad said, put your shoes on. And my mom was like, put your head down and let's go to work. And so she instilled in me that sense of who I was, and that there was never going to be another me, because I was the only child my parents had. And so there was that sense of, just being the best you possibly can be. And so when Doug Banks got me very early on, I worked with Doug in a more intimate sense because we were in the same studio together. And God, I miss him still to this day. But he was one of those guys who he got my warped sense of humor. He, and just really just encouraged me to be that whoever I was, and the quirky things that I would say and do and observations. And he nourished it.
Same. Yeah. You know what's interesting, Sybil? I hear so many, because we already have acknowledged all the parallels that happen in our lives, the places we've worked, where we've gone to school. But now I'm also realizing how many similarities in how people encouraged us, right? Like my mom was very similar. Like she would say she loved me just out of the blue. Like I would be walking by, even if I was misbehaving. So, Jeanne, I love you. And it was like, huh? What? Yeah, oh, okay. Thank you, Mama. I love you too.
Right.
But hearing that, we forget, I think, how empowering that is for somebody to see us. And Doug did the same for me. I think he actually brought out even more of the quirk, because I think when I first started, I thought, I know this, I wanted to have that Yvonne Daniels, that voice and that.
Well, you got the voice.
But that there's so much way more interesting things to me than that voice. But I thought the voice was the thing, because initially that's what people would hear. Yeah. And then Doug was like, yeah, you might have a good voice, but it's that insanity underneath that voice.
That little quirkiness, kookiness that is, bubbling underneath the surface, as your feet are going like this and you're just kind of going like the duck on the pond. Yeah. Yeah. He saw that.
And I think, and you tell me how this played into, because, one of the questions that I ask Bonnie and Shirley when they have come on the pod, I asked, we talk about this as women in the business. Our industry can be super challenging for us. The opportunities that we have or don't have available to us, and when you add on the layer of Blackness, when we add in the intersectionality, as we call it now, it becomes something very different. Not being seen as capable of doing things. And one of our producers that we shared, Karen Lightfoot.
Oh my God.
Foot said to me one time that, when I first started, she says, Jeanne, there's a difference between a co-host, a sidekick, and just a feature or whatever. Right. She said, all of them are essential, but you get to decide among the limited opportunities you get to decide what you do with it. So given
brilliant.
This,
absolutely
right.
It was absolutely brilliant.
And here's the thing. She used you guys as an example of how you, Shirley and Bonnie, about how you figured out where you fit with Doug, where you fit with Tom, all these different people that you've worked with. So I am sure that you have had your share of people telling you what you couldn't do. How did the preparation of people like Doug, your mother, all the other experiences that lifted you up, how did that sustain you through, I'm sure, the disappointments and the challenges that you faced? And have you developed a sort of system of dealing with any other setbacks? Because I'm sure the transition from working every day with Tom to building your own platform in a different way has had its, because entrepreneurship alone,
it just start there, right? But you're trying to build upon what you have or create something new is a challenge unto itself. But even before I got to Doug, my first radio job, as I mentioned, was in Fort Myers, Wink Radio, AM and FM, and TV. Thank you very much. But I stayed on the radio side, and it was quickly apparent to me that they did not like anything about me. The only thing that I was able to do was to be a twofer, and that was as a Black woman. If I had had any kind of handicap, or I guess we don't call them handicaps anymore, but if I had had anything else, that would have just been, I would have been a threefer. They didn't like the way I wrote. They didn't like the way I talked. They didn't like the way I read the news. They didn't like anything. And they made it very difficult for me. And I remember being in the news closet, as sometimes it's just one of those slide doors you just close to do your broadcast.
Yes.
And I remember just being there and just praying to God not to let me cry. I could not let them see me cry because the FM side was facing into the newsroom. And the guy who trained me was in the FM studio, and he saw me just like, literally in prayer. And so he came in, he knocked on the door, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't think I'm going to make it." And so he said, "You're going to make it, and you're going to show these a-holes who you are and that you are fully capable of doing this, so much so that we're going to leave this joint and leave them in the dust." And sure enough, he got a job as the news director at a station across the river and hired me to come and join him. And he said, "I told you that if you stayed the course and just remained who you were and just did," and it was like hearing my mom, talk to me all over again, and we will be okay. And he said, "And you are more than okay." It was almost like the help. You was smart, you was kind, and
you was important.
Right. And this was before the help, but God bless Bob Alexander. And you always have these angels in your life when you least expect it. And you just kind of have to remember that. And especially when you're in a position where you see someone else being, and that's why I try to reach out to my friends. I have a text chain of girlfriends from Reach, from doing the Joyner show. And we've all had to go in our own different directions. And none of us are as successful as we were then. And we kind of need to be lifted up. And I think that's the thing that I learned from my mom and from Bob Alexander and from other people who have helped me along the way. My best friend Yolanda, who is now my business partner. Just be nice. Just be nice and be good and do your job and help those that you see may need, a helping hand, a pat on the back, or a atta girl, whatever it is. And go in with that full confidence and know that you're more than enough. And if they don't get it, you're on to the next. That's the kind of life of the gypsy life of radio anyway. And I've been very lucky. I've only been fired one time, and that was Marv Dyson. Thank you very much, Marv. But that led me to working with Doug Banks and Tom Joyner. Because
isn't that wild?
When we were doing WGCI AM, little Lisa and I, she was producing my show, and we talked literally for 5 hours straight. Sometimes we would be able to throw in some news at the bottom of the hour or whatever, but for the most part, it was just us. And they didn't know how to sell Black talk.
Right.
And I will say that till, my dying day, but they could not sell this station. And so came in on a Monday morning, and Marv said, we're shutting down the station and we're going to go gospel. And I was like, okay, well, now I'll be able to go home and get some sleep. And 4 days later, he called me and he said, how you doing? I said, well, considering the fact that you just fired me, I'm okay. I'm sleeping, and which is a big deal for me. And so he said, well, we're going to put you back to work and want you to come do traffic with Doug Banks in the morning, and we'll see how it works, because Bonnie doesn't want to do the split shift anymore. And the split shift was working with Doug in the morning and Tom in the afternoon doing traffic reports. So initially it was just Doug. And I remember my mom telling my next door neighbor, she's going to go down and do traffic for Doug Banks, and she's going to love him. She's absolutely going to love him. And so my mom came in, she said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I was like, okay, thanks. But those were those confirmations, and those were those people, and being fired that led me to Doug Banks and being lifted up and encouraged by him.
Listen, I'll tell you something. There's nothing like a Marv Dyson firing, because it always leads to something better. Like literally, usually from him. That I don't know how he does it, but I've been fired by Marv, and with a hug, a kiss, and some cries.
Right, right.
And then,
now get your ass back out there and go to work.
Exactly. And they call you back and I'm just, but that taught me a lesson in how you handle those things. Mm-hmm. Because I realized, looking back at it, Marv was one of my biggest champions and doing me favors every time he pushed me, whether it's in a positive direction or what I saw as negative at the time. And I think you touched on something really super important when you talk about needing to hear it from people, needing to hear things from people, because I think we all know in our hearts that we're special, because every single human being is here for something. That's but right. When somebody tells us and reminds us of that, I think it kind of gives you that spur forward when you need it, because it's easy to forget it. It is so easy to forget it. I want to ask you now, since I haven't asked you this yet, and since you're such a wordsmith, when I say the words fearless authenticity to you, what are the first things that come to mind for you, and how it plays out in your life?
When I think of fearless and authenticity, I think of them separately. First of all, and fearless being going out and truly stepping out on faith, and knowing that that whatever it is that God has for you, you're going to be okay, because he's got you. And you do this with faith, but not with fear. And so it could be faithful authenticity, it could be fearless authenticity, but it is something knowing that you have the support system within yourself, as well as from a spiritual realm, that you can go out there and step out there on faith. My mom used to say that that's why God made erasers. And when I was offered the job in Fort Myers, and I was like, I just don't know. It'd be so much easier just to go to grad school and, do this. And she said, what have you got to lose? She said, if it doesn't work out, you just erase it and you move on to the next. And so, but my
I
mother was,
love that. Oh, I'm
and that's
sorry.
why God made erasers. And of course, my mother was also married 4 times, so she kind of erased 3 others,
I
and
love it.
buried her fourth and final husband, my dad.
Oh,
But that was, you just, whatever it is, what have you got to lose? You just go out there, step out on faith, and keep it moving. And so authenticity really comes to me from trying to figure out who I was as a little Black girl, leaving my Black neighborhood every day and going to a predominantly white situation and maintaining that sense of worth and sense of authenticity, but a realness, a reality check from leaving Morgan Park Academy campus and going home every day, and kids telling me, "You don't talk like us," uh, or coming after summer vacation where you get used to a certain way of hearing people talk, and then you come back and say, "What y'all doing?" And it's like,
huh?
who's she talking to?
That's you.
Yeah, and so that was the kind of the world that I straddled, but never denying that I wasn't being who I truly was and who I was meant to be.
I love all of that on a lot of different levels. And you often say that your parents raised you with the saying, "To whom much is given, much is required."
Yep.
How does that mission? Because I see how it plays out in your work. I'm interested in the internal, from the inside out, because it's one thing for me to look at it from the outside in and look at your body of work and what you and Tom were able to create for Black Americans across the country and everybody else who listened, because it didn't just benefit us.
Right.
And I think that was that is one of the things that I find so powerful about music and radio, is
Yeah.
how it brings us together, lets us see each other as we truly are, and go, oh, we do have more in common than we have differences, and
Yeah.
we can bridge those. But with all of that intentional work, how does that, that statement and that body of work happen from the inside out? Like help me, bring me into that brain, girl.
So it's a very small brain, so it won't take long to get you in there. But my mom was raised by my grandfather. My mother's mother died in childbirth for my mom. And so my grandfather and my great grandmother raised my mom from birth until about 2 or 3 years old. And then my grandfather remarried. And my mom didn't have a great relationship with her stepmother, but her relationship with her father was so rock steady. And he was a man of first. He was the first Black man to get his PhD from University of Kansas. He went on to be the president of Lincoln University and HBCU in Jefferson City, Missouri. And so my grandfather said, "I'm going to work as hard as I can to put you through school, to give you all of the advantages as far as education is concerned, so that his thing was so that you never have to depend on any other man." And so my mother took that to heart and kept, moving along with all her relationships and what have you.
I like that in her.
But and a lot of people say that, but sometimes it does something to your psyche as a young child. Well, she gonna do that to, oh boy, would she do that to me? That was never an issue. But so he always showed her the way, and my great grandmother too showed my mom the way of giving back and understanding that you have been given a great deal of privilege. You have a house to live in, a roof over your head, nice clothes. And my mother's like, "Yeah, but I didn't have the hair that I wanted." And my mom was like, my mother used to go to bed at night, and my great grandmother heard her pray that she would get scarlet fever, and that she would lose all of her hair so that she could start all over again. And my grandmother's like, child,
She was really committed to that erasing thing.
oh my God. And so my grandmother's like, "This is not what we're praying for. This is not what we're putting out in the universe. You are good with what you got." And she's like, "You have hair. Don't pray for the hair to go away. Pray to help people who don't have what you have." pray to come into their lives and be able to help them in those situations. And so that's what my mother, passed on to me. And I remember when I can't remember, it was after my dad died, and it was like maybe it had been like the first Christmas, and family and friends really wanted to heap upon me, all the gifts and things. My mom's like, she's good. She's really good. She don't need all of this. And, we're going to have a nice Christmas. And, in the newspapers, I think it was the Sun Times, but they would always have these articles, these columns, in telling about people who were in dire straits. And so if you would like to contribute. And so my mom, cut out this one article, and she went to school and she made copies and she sent it to all of our friends and family. And she said, I promise you, we're fine and we're going to be okay. But here are people who need us. And so let us be the hand that they need. Let us lend to them our hands with goods and services that we can contribute to their lives. And that was something that, I picked up on. And even now, my friends hate it, but I don't do Christmas gifts in terms of that. And what I do is give books to kids. And so all of these things have worked. And like you say, having had angels in my life like Doug Banks and Bonnie and Shirley and folks that just really welcomed me when my first day there at GCI, and I've just never forgotten all of these things kind of work to the good and wanting to help people and give them, whatever they need, whether it's a word or just showing them the way. It really does. I feel as though I am following through on what my great grandmother and grandfather and my mom taught to me and just passing it along.
It's a beautiful legacy that your family
It really
has.
is. It really is.
And I think when we get a sense of what our legacy is or could be or is a part of, it kind of deepens the work quite a bit. I really like how you take the things you love and share it with people. Like, you're a voracious reader, so knowing that you give books to kids is a no-brainer. You have, and I think you still do your book club.
I just revived the book club.
Okay.
and had an opportunity to start it over the holidays. Yeah.
And so what is the most important thing that you've gotten from the works that you've read? Because a lot of times we talk about the advice that we've been given, and clearly you have that in your life and have used it. What about reading? Why is that so important for you? And then the other nugget of what's like one of the top things that you've learned or gotten from your reading?
Books became my friend because, as I said, I was raised as an only child, and my mom was a voracious reader. And I tell the story that the first 3 years of my life, my mother did not drive. And so everywhere she went was on the CTA. And so my grandmother would tell her, you got to talk to this child. You got to read to her. When you're reading, read to her what you're reading. And so as a result, on the bus, my mom would read the Chicago Sun-Times. It was the Daily News at the time, the Tribune. And of course, you can't, live life on the South Side of Chicago without the Defender.
Okay.
And so all of these things she would read to me. And so books, and then, I kind of, would listen to what she would say. And she said, what did you hear? And so I would try to repeat what I heard, or maybe even add some stuff to it. And so that was really important to me in terms of always knowing that, even if there was no one else around, I could always pick up a book. I could always pick up a book. And I remember the first book that had a little Black girl on the cover that my mom bought for me at a book fair. And it was What Mary Jo Shared. And until that time, there weren't books with little Black girls on the cover. And so I understood, and what I got from that, and that I still get from a great many books, is the power of sisterhood and understanding how important it is for you to have a group of women And like Yolanda is real. She's I have a heart for little girls, and she really does in terms of encouraging in them and doing things. And my heart is for us lifting each other up as women and encouraging and giving a word of inspiration, or a hug or whatever it is. And that's what I get from the books and from the authors, and just knowing that other people's experiences can really lend something to what you're reading, can bring something powerful to your life. And usually it has something to do with, and that's not to say that, I don't read books about men and enjoy the company of men and all of that stuff. But what I glean from it is, like, even if you think about the life story of Jackie Robinson, and you understand that there was a wonderful Black woman who was always at his side. And to this day, Mrs. Rachel Robinson is over 90 years old and still carrying forth, and his daughter Sharon, who's a friend of mine, they're still carrying forth the work that he did, what he believed, and carrying it through to generations of not as many as there used to be, but of Black players in the National Baseball League, which I absolutely love. Major League Baseball. I love, sports and things like that. So understanding the power of Black women, and especially how we can help each other and our friends, children, and things like that. That's what I get from it.
Oh, and you live it too. I mean,
I try.
That's how we started this conversation, because of the reach out to me. And my experience with that, and how, and it's interesting how we are all part of this, beautiful circle of, what happens when you take words and turn them into action. Right. So we're winding down now, and these are the last couple of questions I always ask everybody. In your storied career thus far, what is your proudest achievement, and what do you still dream of doing?
My proudest achievement thus far is taking something from nothing. When Tom announced that he was going to leave, and a lot of people, I never assumed this, but a lot of people assumed that, I would be given a show, and that was never in the plans. And so my proudest achievement is leaning on my best friend, who is a real visionary, and understanding that we had to go from nothing to someplace. And so that's when the What You Need to Know newsletter came to be. And that was going to be it. But then that gosh darn pandemic came, and we got fired in April of 2020. The show ended in December 2019, started working on the newsletter before the show even ended. And 4 months later, we were out of work. So what do? Yolanda and her husband, Ward, and I put together a company. And so we worked with David Canner, who is of Urban and Reach One. And we were able to keep the property of the What You Need to Know and use it to sell.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know. I assumed that it was always your production. I had no idea that's how it started.
No.
Sis, I'm even more impressed.
So that's, and it really, and I'm not one to start a business, I'm because I remember when I was working for Hands Across America, and I had a friend, and she owned her own company. I was like, what's the greatest part of this? She goes, well, I got to tell you, the worst part first is, having to turn the lights off and make sure that when I come in on Monday, the lights will come back on. And that's a tremendous responsibility. And I was like, yeah, it really is. That's kind of a big deal. In your own home, you'd like to know when you go and flip the lights on, you paid the bills. And so that was the responsibility, was, owning your own, which is kind of cool. But it's two Black women, one from the South Side of Chicago, one from the South Side of Fort Worth, coming together with a brilliant man who understands the power of our friendship and our sisterhood, and is cool with it, and wants to, be a part of it. And we're a nice little trio. That was probably the most daunting but really a little kernel of things that we don't talk about. Now, we have the streaming, we have partnerships with the American Heart Association and working on others, and with the Divine Nine and Black fraternities and sororities and what have you, and HBCUs. We're starting a foundation.
Oh my gosh! Yay!
Yeah. And I think you'll love this, Jeanne, as a person in the media. Tom Joyner kept kids in historically Black colleges and universities. And so what this foundation is going to do, it's called the HBCU Bridge. And what we're going to do is take young people who say they want to be in this business and connect them with media companies of all types, whether it's television, a film company, a sports group, whatever it is, and get them involved in internships as well as paying internships and paying jobs. And so the bridge is taking them from the HBCUs to the business world. And there are a lot of people who want to do that, who want to be of service to our community and help young people and get them out there and put them in places where they can eventually reach back and in each one, not only teach one, but reach one.
I love that so much because, too, you remind me of how I felt when I started my business, because I think I've always had an itch for running my own thing, but I never thought it was possible because of the overhead and the, what it would cost to have a radio station or a production company.
Right.
When we were coming up in the business, you had to have mad investment and be mad famous to be able to do that kind of thing. I mean, and it was still a struggle. I mean, Oprah and Bill Curtis come to mind, with the way and the level that they were at, and still were like, this is a hard pull, to do. It's I think a lot of us in our business don't realize the power we have to be entrepreneurs because it feels so daunting from what we know. So I can understand. I'm right there with you with the proudest achievement. Now, here's the next question. You talk about what you're creating. What do you also still dream of doing? And this can be personal, professional, or anything.
Well, no, it's something I've always said. First of all, I've always wanted to own a professional football team, and I'm not giving up on that. When I win the lotto, I'll be able to invest, and preferably in Hawaii. And I know it's geographically undesirable, but I think there's a way we can do this. Play virtual football. I don't know, but the other thing is, and this is something that much to my mother's dismay, I've always wanted to own a bar. And
yes, girl, I can see you as a tavern owner. I'm sorry, a tavern, not just a bar.
Come on. Yes, to my mother's dismay, that would be, that's where my daddy comes in. So I've always wanted to own a bar and not a coffee house, but a bar / bookstore. So we could talk and have wine, or maybe in a real adult beverage, and people have a place to come and just kind of chat and talk about books and ideas and things, and buy water, because water is very soothing for me, and as a fire sign, and so that is something that I've always wanted to do, and also a radio station, because we have a deal with Sirius XM, in which we take some of our programs from our evening streaming show and put it on Sirius XM channel 141 on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And Yolanda is a real music person. I mean, we've worked with real music people. Like, you are sitting in the spot of as I like to call him, the old dust rag, Herb Kent, right?
Yes.
Yolanda has a real sense of music, and so she puts the music in for our show that runs on Sirius XM. And so I think, and without having to do all of the analytics and the demographics and all of that crap that goes along with that they have to think about, and how often you can play this song, and what time of day and things like that. Let's just do it. Let's just do it and have it.
I'm in.
Okay.
Whenever you, because what this sounds like is our version of XRT, where
the
jocks get to program their own thing, and that.
Let's be Terry Hemmerts, and and just let's pull the albums off the wall.
The albums. Yes. girl. Okay, I'm in with your dream, Sybil. If wherever you want me to, especially if we do it in Hawaii.
Come on. You just walk out your door. Oh, hello. It's time to go to work.
That's gonna be lovely. Oh, sis, I love your dreams. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And I also love the peek inside, little Sybil, because I can see how you've always been reporting and being this information sharer your whole life and truly living in who you are. I don't know what the answer to this final question will be, but it is one I always ask everybody because it is about your internal experience of it. When do you feel that you are at your best, truest, most authentic expression of yourself?
Wow. I know you've asked this question before and I've thought about it, and I don't have a real answer, but I do know where I feel most comfortable, and that's right here in front of a microphone. It's a big block. I don't have any kind of, there's nothing that separates us here. And I do feel comfortable in having girlfriend conversations like you and I are having, and and just having a sense that what I have done that day is something that I like to have every day. And in our podcast, I say I like to do 3 things every day. That's to have a great cup of coffee. That would be right here. A good cup of coffee, to have a great laugh, and to learn something. And if I can't provide that learning component and knowing that, somewhere a light bulb has gone off in someone's head, then, I feel as though, my work is good and I feel like I've accomplished something for that day.
I think you answered the question quite well, Miss Sybil Wilkes.
Thank you, Miss Jeanne Sparrow.
Thank you so much for sharing, sis. I am honored, and it was a joy to get to know you even a little bit better.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a joy to be here with you. I really appreciate the invitation, and working with you and Lisa. And I appreciate your being so patient because the schedule is just a little wonky. But I really have enjoyed it. It's been one of the better experiences I've had in a very long time. So thank you with my clothes on. So thank you so much.
Yes, indeed, girl. I love it. What a joy it is to get the opportunity to talk to somebody who knew you win, and somebody who helped you win. Sybil has known me since the beginning of my career and really helped me at the beginning of my journey. So it was a gift to be able to talk to her now at this point in our journeys. Here's some highlights. Lots of affirmations for me that the things I talk about and the things I'm focused on are so essential to so many people, especially when it's somebody I admire. This idea that we have the support system within ourselves to do what we need to do, that we can step out on faith, whatever it is, because he's got us. God's got us. And what her mom said about that, that's why God made erasers. Asking yourself the question, what do you have to lose? So many times we use that question in a way that isn't necessarily positive, like we're looking at it as a negative, but it really is a question of, I don't have anything to lose from this. If it doesn't work out, we erase and move on to the next thing, stepping out on faith again and keeping it moving, and how that becomes a process toward our success, toward the life that we're trying to build for ourselves. And I love the idea of how we as parents, aunties, uncles, the community, the village that surrounds a child can be the foundation for their authenticity, to pour into them, to imbue and instill in them their worth. How Sybil does it herself for the young people in her life, but how that came from her mother. That was the most beautiful thing. Her mom singing to her, "You are my sunshine," letting her know that even though we realize as adults the world is going to be difficult enough once they walk out the door, that we can give them a sense of who they are, letting them know that what they do is as good as, if not better than, someone else. And how important that is when we talk about different identities, whether it's, in our cases, we're talking about being Black women, but I think that's true for any culture, any identity that is different from the majority, however you define that, knowing that when you have to straddle all these different worlds where you may be within your own community and still get questioned there about who you are and what you're doing, who do you think you are, kind of thing. And then when you go into a different community where they're just questioning whether or not you belong among them, how knowing and pouring into our children can imbue, instill, and have a foundation that is based on authenticity and worth and a sense of self. Love all of that. I also really like how she has a goal for 3 things every day. Yes, one of them is a great cup of coffee, which for a lot of people is a work in and of itself. But the good piece of, wanting to have a great laugh every day, wanting to learn something every day, and knowing the 3 things that are a foundation for a good day, because then you have a really open-ended but finite set of things that you want to accomplish. And I'm sure that makes her feel good every day, and having that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, no matter how many other challenges you had, helps you to focus on what's really important. So thank you, Sybil. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for your stories, which you've poured into me and our community and so many people across the U.S. I also really appreciate you, my Fearless Authenticity family. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention and your support. I would not do this podcast without you, and I could not do it and make it happen without my team either. Thank you, my production team, for your hard work every single week, day in and day out. I do hope that you will like, rate, review, download, subscribe, and share this episode. It is available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. Please join my community there. You will find it at Ms. Jeanne Sparrow, as well as on Facebook and TikTok. That's my handle there. On Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at JM Sparrow. So drop by wherever you like to go and say hi, share your comments, your thoughts, your suggestions, your questions, whatever it is, and your ideas. I always love to hear what it is you want to hear on this podcast. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.